Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast, Multifamily Chronicles. We are at episode number 4, and my guest today is James Alexander. Uh, Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adrian. Looking forward to it.
James, in introduction, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been in the property management and real estate development industry for over 22 years. And it's needless to say, it is a multi-hat hourly change. It's not a boring industry that we're in by any means, but it's exciting. And I've had the benefit of actually being exposed to a number of facets in our industry, from multifamily to critical asset, data centers, hospitals, industrial, commercial, and large retail, office and multi-use or mixed use rather facilities. So I've had a lot of exposure to different areas of it and have learned at each point of it. So I have to say it's something that after 20 years, you're either passionate about it or you're not. And clearly, it's an industry that has, with COVID and the pandemic, it's certainly put a new twist in a lot of our approaches to what has been the standard and the norm.
James, it's very interesting. I want to point this out to our audience, right? That typically my guests are either someone with an operation management background or maintenance management background. You have them both, and I think I find that very fascinating, right? What are the best things that you learn from being on both sides of the business that you would like to share with our audience?
You come at it with a different perspective. You get faced with different problems, obviously, from both spheres, should we say? Facilities management isn't construction, even though they're both working on the same product, and they're ultimately the end goal is to have a nice, finished, efficient product. But they come at it from entirely different ways. The same way, like with with operations. Um, uh, you are a property manager, you're an asset manager. They're both dealing with the same asset. They're both dealing to get the same product to the same over the line, so to speak, and keep it efficient, keep it curb appeal up. But one of them approaches it really from running spreadsheets and running cost analysis and forecasting from a desk, where a property manager runs it from physically walking on the property, meeting with the tenants, touching the building, seeing the asset itself, walking around. In my experience, and I've been very lucky that I've had some very good leaders and mentors over my 20 plus years, in that I've had exposure to, as I said, to multifamily, to commercial, to office, industrial, retail. So I can look at things from a more complete perspective. I feel it allows me to analyze and look at a property or look at a problem or get to a solution that might be a little more expeditious or a little more efficient than, say, someone who is just focused on facilities or just focused on property management. So I feel like I can add a lot of color and flavor to it. And my history and the learning that I've had, and I've made mistakes, I just don't make them twice. And that has always benefited me in taking a goal and reaching it. And it's it's a lot of balance. It's provided me balance in how I run a property or a portfolio.
That's a wonderful perspective, James. One of the things that we're dealing with in our industry, and actually all the industry, if I had to be honest, is gonna be what it's been known as the Great Resignation. Uh, a lot of a lot of individuals, a lot of professionals out there looking for the best opportunity for themselves. I'd like for you to weigh in on your experience with this phenomenon. What do you think that is causing it, or it caused it? What are the causes? How did we get here, and also how can we fix this?
you know, it's it's um, it's interesting because that phrase was coined by Professor Anthony Klotz and from Texas A&M in 2019, and we really weren't in the full drive of this whole pandemic. But I think there was a lot of percolating of sorts of emotions and people, and prior to this pandemic hitting. And then when the pandemic hit, it almost like opened up the floodgates. And I say that in this regard. The Great Resignation, it's burnout, it's stress, it's employees not feeling that management had their back, it's C-suite people that I've worked with and I've worked for that really have refused to participate in the pain of this. And I think a lot of people, when they started to work from home and work more remotely and work from Zoom and work out of their own home offices and would only be at the properties a very limited time, they became much more accustomed to having that control from home. I think they liked the fact that they were I don't want to say a safety net, but they had family and whatnot around them. They were in a comfort environment where prior to that, I think there was this, it may have been a veil of ignorance more than anything else. But prior to that, I think that people were just excited that they had a job and we're all right. I can't do anything to lose this job. I need this paycheck. I got to put food on the table. And absolutely true. They really do. But when this started to hit, I think that a lot of people started to put themselves first and put their families first ahead of the job. And I really think when people started opening up their own businesses, creating their own futures and their own destinies, this fed into that, and it supported it in a very obscure way, but it gave them strength to move forward and to start resigning. I mean, since 2020, what was it, June of 21, we lost almost 12 million jobs. And I believe Forbes and both Inc. had a study out that said that another 54% of the people in the next 24 months are going to be resigning their positions. And that's very true, not only in our industry, because it affects us in the long term with residents and tenants and companies not needing as much commercial space, but it also affects us with those are our people that are leaving jobs. I mean, there's a huge shortage of facility and maintenance managers that I've been dealing with for years, and it's just becoming worse. I know you're dealing with it as well. So it's it kind of feeds into a lot of different areas, but the collateral damage that you and I would probably see that some others wouldn't is it has a ripple effect, and it's carrying on. But I do believe that was the main driver: people becoming less fearful of not having that paycheck and more control of their own destiny and putting their families first and putting themselves first. And I, as I said, I witnessed this in a number of trade association events I've attended recently too. Some of these C-suite levels just, they kind of shielded themselves around this and weren't going to participate in the pain. More are so now, but yeah, I think that was the main driver, one of them, absolutely one of the main drivers of why this Great Resignation, is taking effect.
You're making a lot of great points, but I'm gonna point out a couple of them that you did make, right? All of us, really realizing that there's more to life than just work, or that there's life after work.
Oh yeah.
And then the second thing is people starting their own little, side hustles, gigs, however you would call them, whether they're driving an Uber or Lyft, whether they, do a little bit of a consultants on the side.
Yep.
It's just something that brings them extra income. And, with the extra income, here comes extra freedom and extra choices, right? So
yeah, you nailed it.
All of a sudden, people do have more choices. I find it very interesting that I've been talking to technician level individuals, professionals in our industry, and I would ask them, especially the younger ones, I would ask them, hey, where would you see yourself? Like, conversations would be 100% honest, right? Where would you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now? And most that I've been talking to, they were not seeing themselves as being in the service, in a maintenance industry. They had different dreams, and I think this is related to just the huge opportunities that are out there and unlimited opportunities, again, not just within the industry but outside. So their perspective on life and profession and their career widens. Like we're not just competing against each other to share this pool of talent that, by the way, is shrinking, but we're actually competing with everybody else nowadays from a culture perspective, from a opportunity perspective, from a pay perspective, from all these angles. We are competing. It's literally just everything goes.
You
So
nailed it. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's so funny you said that, because it's those are conversations I've actually had with some of my team members as well at various properties. So it's ironic that you said that, unless we're sharing the same team.
or maybe it's a widespread issue.
Maybe, but but you just touched that. That was an interesting thought. You just touched on a few other things, like you were talking about culture and and pay. You mentioned as well in those two arenas, and they walk all hand in hand. I mean, I don't know if you'd have as much of this great resignation, or if you didn't have a culture that would be deemed toxic. I don't think you would have as much resignation if you were immersed in say a toxic culture and weren't burning out. If you had a company that had just the opposite 180-degree, to make you feel, will contribute to your confidence and contribute to your contribution, and to make you feel that whatever you say or do, has a say and has some substance to it and matters. Whether it's something they adopt or not, you have the ability to go and speak with someone, or introduce it in a team meeting, and not feel embarrassed or ashamed that, oh, I may not have the smarts for this. So it's something along those lines. And it all walks hand in hand, from the great resignation all the way down. There's a facet and a bridge to all of it. And so I agree 100% what you're saying.
Another great point that you just brought, right? It's culture, and then specifically toxic cultures. So let's think about this, right? Everybody is actually chasing the talent, whatever's left out there, right?
Yeah.
But then how about our employees that are currently still around? It's not like nobody's around anymore. What do we do to retain them? What do we do to show them that we're appreciating? Is this is this something that you like to wait on? Like, what would you think of would you think of a few ways to just kind of a few ideas of how we could do better as industry, as companies, to retain the existing talent so they won't step out, they won't leave us first before we start bringing in talent to fill in the current open positions?
Oh, absolutely. And it's and especially in our industry, it's something that I've seen again for years developing out. When you find, and you see it, you can tell where there's a toxic environment. There are telltale signs. Like, you go to a company, and if at 4:55 p.m. you see nothing but taillights and exhaust pipes heading out of the parking lot, and people aren't hanging there, they're not interacting, that there's a burnout, or there's a sense of anxiety around, or there's a lot of turnover. You can review glass doors, you can talk to people who are participating, you can get the feel, but you can change that around as well. I've been brought onto companies that had a toxic environment and knew they had a toxic environment and wanted to do something to change it. So some of the examples that I personally introduced, or have been on teams that we all contribute to introduce, we get our employees on a regular meeting basis. We make sure that they're in the rooms, and we'll have them either a small, like a supervisory meeting once a week. You have your daily meetings every day, you have your team huddles, but then we would expand upon those and have a few more people that are on their teams. Maybe their senior people participate either weekly or monthly, and then everybody on a quarterly basis. I mean, from custodial to security, to facilities, to maintenance, to the fleet maintenance teams. Everybody comes in, and we would get them enrolled in, like, IFMA, the International Facility Management Association. We get them enrolled in courses from IRM or NAA or ICSC or BOMA. we would invest in them. We would make games and have little competitions, not to embarrass them, but so to build their confidence and eliminate this us and them mentality, management and employee. And those are hard hurdles to overcome, but they can be done. You know, recognition, open recognition, having, you know, the sense to make your teams and make your direct reports have what they say, and they know what they say matters, that they feel that they can contribute, and they feel that, you know, they're not going to be embarrassed, as I mentioned earlier, that you know, oh my God, I better not say anything because I may not be smart enough or I'm going to get ridiculed. Throw 10 things against the wall, 8 of them are not going to stick, but 2 are. And that's the type of approach that, you give recognitions, you give attaboys, you don't berate somebody in front of their peers. You know, you let them, even though if you have an answer to a problem, you let them guide you to the answer, even though that you know that answer. And if they're starting to fall off track, you kind of steer them back onto it, but give them the confidence that they are creating and coming up with a solution. And if they know that you're invested in them, that whole turnover, that burnout, that us and them mentality goes away. And they start talking to their friends, or they start talking to people in other companies. And, you know, you got to come over with me. We got a really good team here. They really care about you. They look for you. And that's how I've built my teams. That's how a lot of times I've done it, by just showing some respect. And it's worked. Quite honestly, it's worked. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? What do you?
Yeah, well, what you just described is, leadership at its finest. And it's very interesting. I had a roundtable on maintenance and hiring last week. And, one of the questions that I brought up to the panel was, can our industry benefit from using influencers? And, there was a very good, debate that we had right there. I think that, this is a practice that, a technique that's being used, Instagram, like they're multi-million-dollar businesses built on the back of, just influencers.
Sure.
When people think about influencers, I don't want them to think, oh, you gotta have 2 million followers. No, like an influencer in an industry could have like a very solid base of like 20 to 50 people. They're very, very, close to the person. And then that person goes to a different company, goes to work, and this gives signal to people in their inner circle that, hey, something must be going on. If John so and so
Yeah,
went to work
exactly.
for this company, something must be good. So it just kind of creates this excitement, and hey, everybody all of a sudden asks questions. Ask John, hey
Yes.
John, what is it like? Why'd you go over there? What is it, about this company? So then chances are that, John is the person that's able to open the door for the rest of them to come over and join the group. Now, when
You nailed it. Exactly.
when you're talking about a cult, like a company, a group that's 200, 300, 500 employees, right? For one individual to bring 10, 15, 20 people, especially if they're in management positions, this could drastically change the whole entire company culture. Like one person could do a lot of changes, could influence a lot of change. When you bring that person and you bring 10, 15 more that kind of have, similar mindsets, have similar values, you could change the whole entire culture in a very fast, very short term.
Oh, sure.
So I think that's what it comes down to, leaders. And we don't have to use the term influencer. I think, some people are apprehensive about using this term because, it might be something that's more like a superstar type of individual, which, in all reality, if you have influence over people at the same time, that's leadership, right? Because
Go
that's
ahead.
what leadership is about. It's not about a position. It's about influence over people, like uh, influencing people to, have a certain behavior, to follow certain, I guess, rules, or a certain policy, is not enforcing it by, fear, or by the fact that, you're in a position of power.
Yes.
So that's what leadership is, right? Now, same thing goes with influencers, right? They don't really have titles necessarily. Sometimes they do, but I'll say most of the times, probably they don't. have title in a company, but they're the type of people that create excitement. They could, create this type of environment and bring more people and get people excited about just being part of something greater than themselves.
It's interesting you should say that. Take it with one step further, though, Adrian. I mean, one of the things that I've had success in doing, and this is from, I'm coming at this from a vice president title. So I was suit and tie, and I wasn't on the front line, so to speak, of every property. But one of the roles that I introduced, and one of the challenges I introduced, I wanted people from VP level down to work on a property for a week, to act as a property manager for a week again, because I think they lose sight of some of the nuances that you need to, and the distractions and the stress of it all. Yes, we have goals. Obviously, the company is there for a reason, and people are in certain positions for a reason. But I think it's vitally important that vice presidents get back on to the trenches, so to speak, get into the trenches and be a property manager, assistant property manager, and to really not forget some of the things that some of them actually, some vice presidents that I and presidents I know have never managed a property in their life. They were actually, I wouldn't say they were groomed, but they were kind of handed some roles, and they really don't know what it takes to run a property, to sit in a property manager's chair, to get the 50,000 interruptions throughout the day, and to wear 57 hats. And like, one of the things I do, all right, I actually put myself on call on various properties 1 weekend a month, not because it's a trust level, but I want to see what my team is facing. I want to know what they're going out with. I see the reports. I don't know if a pipe bursts or fire alarm goes off, or, whatever is going on for whatever reason. But, I want to be involved in that. I want to get that call. And residents, be it commercial or be them multifamily, that know me, are really surprised that I'm the one knocking on their door when they get a call at 3 a.m. And, I'm the person who's actually standing there now. But the tone it sets for my teams, my facility management teams and my maintenance teams, goes beyond words. But I have that background. I have that maintenance background. Like, when I started as an industry, I started as a custodian. And from there, I worked into maintenance, and there into construction, and from construction to leasing and management and PM and regional and, vice president, until I was a national director. But I worked at all those facets. And I firmly believe that if you want to be truly successful and efficient and effective, not only as a leader, but just to run the properties, because you live and die by the numbers, and that's the truth, you just do. You have to know how to handle each one of those levels. You have to really understand it, and to understand it, you got to work it. And you would ask me at the beginning of this call, what the dichotomy of from management operations. That's where my strength comes from, because I've touched so many different things, but I stay involved with it. Like, just 2 months ago, I was property manager for a few weeks. I just wanted to see what it was like again. And you know what? It opened my eyes to a few things. And it allowed me to go back to my property management teams and tweak a few items and make them more efficient. They were happier. The morale started to lift up because I actually truly understood what they were dealing with, which ties into a lot of the things we just said about burnout and about a toxic environment and employee retention and things along that nature. It makes a difference. It makes a big difference. I don't know. I mean, do you share that thought, or do you have something maybe a little different?
I think it makes all the difference in the world. First of all, you're recreating that connection between, the higher up and then the site level, right? A lot of times I think it's very easy for us in top management to forget the fact that folks on site, they have a property to run. They have so many things in a day. And then by us, I guess, asking for things, have you done this report? What about this? What about that? We might not even realize that maybe there's like 2 or 3 or 5 people asking the same person things while they have to run an asset, on like regular day-to-day running operation. And while they're doing that, they have to answer to, all these questions for from VP of operation, from VP of asset management, from director of maintenance, from director of marketing. It's just we only know like our little piece, but we don't necessarily know what are the other pieces. And I think just keeping connected, keeping in close contact with the sites really helps us keep a realistic image of what's really going on in their life, in the work life, and it's extremely super helpful. I completely agree with you on
Yeah,
this.
I think you're right. I think it is extremely helpful, especially when you connect. I'm not saying you got to go out and be buddies with these people and go out and go drinking parties. Nothing. I'm not even going that. I'm just saying connect with them on a personal level so they know that and you got to care. You really have to care. I mean, it really is. It's like having a whole separate family. You're with 8 hours a day, and then you come home to your own family. You have your own interactions, but it is a family. And you have to get involved. You have to get involved. But the bottom line is the company always has to come first. It just does. Like me, I've been in 11 states. I'm on the eastern seaboard. I'm in Southwest Florida in the Naples area, and so there's explosive growth down here. But the dichotomy between how companies are run down here in Florida to what the property management and development companies I've been with in the Boston market or New York market or Providence or Connecticut, there's a distinct difference. Just you can feel it in the culture, and you can feel it in the vibe. There's a distinct difference, and I think it's I think getting the employees involved in IREM in IFMS or BOMA or BOMA or any NAAA, and investing in your team and investing in your employees. And I don't mean putting them in front of a laptop and having them watch videos and whatnot. A lot of that's becoming, it's the way it's done, but a lot of it's coming a little archaic too. I mean, physically get them on an HVAC unit, physically get them to put in a door, a window, understand how fasteners work. What's a Senko fastener opposed to just a straight galvanized nail, things along that way, like physically have them touch stuff. And don't embarrass them if they don't know their level of skill set. You keep investing in them and you keep adding on to their skill sets and they feel it and they feel that you care, is that whole caring point I was making. They're going to stay and they're going to speak highly of you, and turnover is going to be reduced. Again, goes right back to where we started the conversation too, about toxic cultures. It'll erode that toxic culture. And it's the way I like to run my teams. I think it's important. I think it's important that anybody on an upper management level understand what the hell needs to go on really the most entry level of the company, to be the person on call. You're much more effective. And they see that.
You just James, you just mentioned the call, right? The on call on a few occasions. How do you on call, being on call is kind of the one of the top complaints that I'm hearing from maintenance professionals. And I think not just the fact of being on call itself is more like, okay, if we're gonna be on call, are we gonna be properly compensated for it? So because oftentimes, the person on call gets a call, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they go to the property and they spend, let's say, 2 hours. They deal with emergency, they go back home. They had to come back to the regular shift in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock, whenever they to report their job. And then 6 hours in, because they had 2 hours worked overnight, the manager will say, well, you work between 2 and 4 a.m. this morning, so you had 2 hours already. So now, because you work during the regular shift, which is 6 hours, you're gonna have to leave earlier, because we just have to manage overtime. And I think this is the main complaint. I wanted to ask you, James, what do you see, and how are a few ways that we could actually come up with ideas to actually compensate the guys for their effort, for the fact that, like, even if you don't get a phone call, like, you really can't go out of town or can't really plan any family activities, because that phone call might come through anytime.
Well, you definitely need a schedule. You brought up several valid points there. How I've introduced it on various properties, it depends on the property. Like a brand new property is not going to need as much, usually won't need as much, handling and 3 a.m. calls and whatnot, where, maybe a B grade garden flat or a B or C grade commercial office park, we'll get some of those calls and we'll get more often the calls at night. Um, Me, I have my teams do, there's a 2 hour minimum on my call and I get time and a half for my maintenance teams. And there's no question, you got to follow the budget, but if you do your budgets correctly and you forecast correctly and you understand where you're going to get your hits throughout the year, and you see that, your life expectancy on a number of HVAC units is really coming down to another year or two, and you're going to get, and you always have a down AC at after business hours. Always, always, always. Never seems to go down during the business day. It's always after business hours, or a pipe always breaks after business hours. If something happens, it's always late. But yeah, the hardest management, time management that I've faced and that a lot of my peers have faced has been the OT. And ownership and investors, depending if it's public or private, it's you get your butt chewed out for it a lot. You always get called to task on it. But if you can show them that the asset is in need of repairs, and that's why we're hitting OT, that should dictate where the budget's going to go. That should dictate what type of improvements need to be done so you can reduce the OT. But it's not just I do these variance analysis every week. So I see where this OT is going and what parts are being done. I want to know. But because I have the maintenance background, I can see what the validity of that is. Property managers are key to running the overtime. Do we have the proper staffing in the daytime, which kind of bridges off to what you just said. Someone just did 2 hours at night, you're already at 6 hours. You could send them home as long as a lot of the majority of work is done that day, and you have at least one maintenance person per 100 units. Sitting around let me rephrase that, at the asset during business hours, and there's no major emergencies going on. But if there are, or you have to do a few turns, or you have to get appliances done, or you have to do something around the pool or in the common area, and you're doing some work inside, you're going to pay the OT. You're going to have to pay the OT. Then you run into another risk on top of that, and that's, are they milking you? Are they dragging their feet so they can get the OT? Are they, and I say they, I'm referring to, facilities teams, the people who actually pounding the nails with the hammers. Are they going a little bit slower? And they're going slower because they were just out all night long, in which case you can let them come in later? Or are they going slower because they're trying to milk the system? Those are all the hats the property manager needs to wear. Those are the property managers on the front line, and you have to rely on that person to tell you what's going on with their teams, which kind of segues and begs another obvious point. Does the property manager have the skill sets to understand if they're getting ripped off or not from a vendor, or if they're getting their team dragged on because certain molding wasn't done right in the common areas, or the LEDs didn't change over correctly, or ballasts weren't installed correctly? You need, your property manager has to have some kind of maintenance and facilities background to understand how to deal with these people. Or you're going to be calling it out, and you're going to be third partying a vendor and a contractor to get on site more often than you should, when it could be kept in-house. All of it affects the budget. All of it affects your bottom line. And that goes into what we talked about at the beginning of the call too. Proper training, on-call expectations, getting people involved and investing in your team so they have the confidence and they have the morale and their back is uptight and, straight up, meaning they're going to contribute, and they're not going to be leaving at 4:45. They're going to want to hang on. They're going to be personally invested into us. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I knew it's going to be fascinating to bring you on, James, because your experience with both maintenance and operations, makes for a perfect mix here. And then that's the type of insight that I hope that all of our maintenance managers will gain over time, so they could be able to make a better case for themselves and business case. because we're approaching the end of our conversation, James, I want to open this up for last thoughts for you. And, how would you like to close for today, our conversation?
I have to tell you something, Adrian. My first engagement on a podcast with you, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. You really just how you introduced certain points started to kind of regurgitate areas in my professional career that are now making me think how I'm going to approach something just a little bit different when our meeting ends on something else that I'm dealing with. So, I found this beneficial. I hope I can, get called back again. I really do enjoy this quite a bit, and I enjoy speaking with you. So, thank you. Thank you very much.
Definitely, James. Thank you for coming over. I truly enjoy our conversation. We could definitely go on for another one, but that's gonna be that's gonna be another episode right here.
I hope so.
Thank you very much for watching the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and this is episode number 4 with James Alexander. Again, thank you very much for watching us.
Thank you.